Hey friends, Dorian here. I'll be DMing a new campaign soon, and I have some players joining who've never played Dungeons & Dragons before. Plus, I know that there's a decent number of people here who have never played Dungeons & Dragons and might want to play in one of my campaigns, or start their own, or join a campaign being run by a different DM. So I decided that it would probably be a good idea to record a few little tutorials on making a character, playing a character, and creating or joining a campaign. These tutorials are meant primarily for people joining one of my campaigns or one-shot adventures. So the tools that I'll be referencing and demonstrating will be the ones that I use in my campaigns. Dungeons & Dragons is less of a game and more of a game system, a set of guidelines or rules on how to play a game. There are many ways to play, and your DM may use entirely different tools than I do, but if you're interested in the process for my players, this is where to start. In this video, I'll be guiding you through the process of making your character sheet in D&D Beyond. Your character sheet will be your reference tool for all of the details about your character that are important to playing the game. Things like your abilities, special skills you might have, spells you can cast, inventory you have, as well as the various features and traits that come from your character's species, background, and class. So here we have the character sheet for one of my NPCs in the Curse of Strahd campaign, Ishtar, a Dampier warlock of the undead patron Strahd von Zarovich. So, if we look at this character sheet here, we see a few things right away. This is going to be the basic information about our character, our character's portrait, name, species, in this case Dampier, and their class. Class is going to be what kind of character they are, and you can have levels in different classes. So this character has 4 levels into the Warlock class, and different levels in classes will get you different traits from those classes, spells that you can cast, etc. Then below that we have this character's stats. So you'll see here strength 8 minus 1 here. This is the stat, and then every even number, it's going to increase by 1. So here 8 has minus 1, starting at 10, 10 being 0, 8 minus 1, here we have 14 plus 2. What that means is if I were to roll for dexterity with this character, dexterity, I would roll a 20-sided die and then add my modifier here, this plus 2. That's going to work for all of these different numbers that you see here. So if I'm rolling for charisma, maybe persuasion or something, I would add plus 4. And we'll get into rolling for specific skills like persuasion in a minute. But here are your general stats and your proficiency bonus. So your proficiency bonus is going to increase as your level increases. And what that is, it means that you're proficient in the thing that you're trying to do. So say that I'm proficient in using long swords. So when I use my long sword, I add my proficiency bonus to that roll. You've got your base walking speed. Heroic inspiration. So heroic inspiration is something that your DM will give you. If you do something really cool, I might say, take a point of inspiration. You'll add that in here. So if you have heroic inspiration, then you can expend that heroic inspiration to re-roll any roll. So say you did something really cool last session, I've given you heroic inspiration, and then during this session you just barely miss that perfect hit on the boss fight. You can expend your heroic inspiration, re-roll that, and hopefully get a better roll the second time. Up here we have short rest and long rest. These are ways of recovering your character if you've been in some battle, your HP is low, or you've expended some of your spell slots and you need to recover those. Then with your party and in a safe space and with your DM's permission, you can either short rest or long rest. Here we have our current HP, temporary HP, and oh, that's my phone number. Oh my god, don't text me. Stupid autofill. Yeah, so in this box here, you can either heal or take damage. So I want to take, let's say I want to take 5 points of damage. Boom, it's going to reduce my hit points right there. We'll go ahead and heal those 5 points of damage. Heal. There we go. Let's say I cast Armor of Agathis. We'll get down there. Temporary hit points are effects of certain things like spells. You can't heal temporary hit points. So if I had 10 temporary hit points, for example, and then I took 5 damage, then my temporary hit points would reduce by 5. But if I were to heal 5, it doesn't increase my temporary hit points. These are kind of like a buffer before you get to your real hit points. Alright, down to the next row. Let's start right here. We have initiative, armor class, and then defenses and conditions. So conditions, this is something that would occur like in battle usually, something like poisoned or restrained or unconscious. These are conditions that can be added here. You just click on the box, and so say you've been blinded, we could just add the blinded condition then. Defenses, this is something that is going to come from either your species or from your class or your background. This character, because of their warlock class, they have defense, they have immunity from being frightened. So they cannot be frightened by anything. Their armor class here of 12, this is the number that someone has to beat to hit you, or someone has to get to hit you. So let's say I have a +2 to my attack and I roll a 10. 10 is lower than the armor class, but I get a +2 to my attack, so I really rolled a 12. That hits the armor class, which would hit Ishtar. So armor class is the thing that you have to beat in order to damage what you're trying to hit. In this case, my armor class can be influenced by my dexterity. And then I also have a spell that allows me to set my armor class to 13 plus my dexterity. Next, we're going to go over to our saving throws over here. So our saving throws are a little different than our straight skill checks over here. For example, you could see that charisma, I am proficient in charisma saving throws. So I add my proficiency bonus to my charisma modifier in order to get my charisma saving throw of +6 as opposed to +4, which will go up as my level goes up. That means that there are certain spells that will say make a charisma saving throw, and if you save against it, maybe you're not charmed or something, or hypnotized, and this would be the modifier that I use for that. Your DM might say something like make a constitution saving throw. And so for my constitution saving throw, I would add +3 to my d20 roll. Coming down next to senses. This is your passive senses. Your DM will primarily use this. Say you walk into a room and there is some sort of clue to the plot that the DM already knows is in that room. He might say something like, hey, does anybody have a passive perception of above 12? And if anybody has that passive perception of above 12, maybe they notice that right away. Passive investigation is how good a character is at piecing things together, pattern recognition, clue finding right off the bat. And passive insight is how good a character is naturally at reading other people and reading their emotions and intentions. You'll also see things here like dark vision. So my character gets dark vision from their species, which allows them to see in the dark up to 60 feet. Down here, proficiencies and training. This is where these proficiencies come into play when it comes to different armors, tools, weapons, and languages. So all the different languages you can speak, the tools that you're good with, and the weapons and armor that you can use. Up next here, we have our skills. So skills comes back to that proficiency again, but these are specific things that you can do to role play your character, to pilot your character. So you have acrobatics. Say you want to vault over a table to get a better angle on a spell at a character. You don't have Misty Step prepared. I would say something like, give me an acrobatics check. The DC is 10. That means that you would have to beat a 10 with a roll, and you would add your acrobatic skill to that, which would be +2. So I would roll a d20, add 2 to that, and then if I beat a 10, I did that successfully. If I didn't, then my DM will narrate something. Animal handling. Arcana is your knowledge of magic. Athletics. Deception. This character is very deceptive. It's very good. It's very easy for me to lie to other people. And then history, your knowledge of history. Insight is being able to read people's emotions. Intimidation. Investigation is finding clues, pattern recognition. Medicine, nature, perception, etc., etc., etc. These will all come in play in different ways during campaigns, and a good DM will play to the strengths and weaknesses of their characters. You can see the mod here. Acrobatics is using my dexterity modifier. Animal handling is using wisdom. Arcana is using intelligence. Athletics is using strength, etc. That is these modifiers up here. And then adding your proficiency bonus to that, if you are proficient in that thing. The last piece is this big screen over here, which is actually all of these different screens. This is all of the stuff your character can do right now. So if I go into actions, these are my different actions in combat. I have these 2 daggers, and I can attack with one of my daggers and use my bonus action to attack with another dagger due to my 2-weapon fighting over here, somewhere right here. But this is going to have all the things that you can do on it. This is going to be your reference sheet for all of that. And I can see that my dagger has a range of 20 feet or 60 feet. And it has a +4 to hit. And if it does hit, then you roll your damage. So you roll your d20, you add +4. You get better than the armor class of the enemy creature that you're hitting. And then once it hits, you roll for damage. So the damage for this is 1 4-sided dice, 1d4 +2. And it is piercing damage. So if there's a creature that is resistant in their defenses here, they're resistant to piercing damage, they have like a really hard shell or something, then they would take half damage from that. Maybe they're vulnerable to piercing damage. They're a creature that like has kind of a bubbly outside or something that you can pierce and break open. Then you would double that damage against that creature. So my different actions here that I have. This is an attack. and it tells me what kind of attack it is. This is a dagger. It's a melee weapon. Eldritch Blast is a cantrip. Comes from my Warlock class. Now, that leads us into a little bit of our spells. So we have cantrips, and then our various leveled spells. And the spell slots that we have. I'm a Warlock, so I only have 2 spell slots, but they are always at my highest level spell. So I always cast all of my spells as a level 4 character at level 2, because that's the highest level of spells that I have. And then you have your cantrips. So cantrips are spells that you can cast without expending a spell slot. So they're not limited in the number of times that you can use them. I can use Eldritch Blast, Frostbite, and Mage Hand whenever I want. To cast one of my other spells, I want to use one of my Pact Magic spells. I'm going to cast Armor of Agathis on myself. You see how it checked that box after I checked cast on this. And then it should have given me temporary HP points. It didn't. You want to keep an eye on those things. So I should have gotten 5 temporary hit points, I think. So I use this as a 2nd level spell slot. 10 hit points. Yep. Okay. So you want to keep an eye on that. It doesn't always work. Maybe I did something wrong. But there's your spells. It's a good reference sheet at the very least. We will be doing most of our spell casting and whatnot inside of Foundry. And I'll make another video about that later. Here we have our characters' inventory, the various things that they have on them. So for example, this character has a Dust of Disappearance that they can use and make themselves invisible. They have a Dust of Sneezing and Choking, and they have a Wind Fan, so they can blow this dust into enemies or over the top of other things. This will also show you your attuned items, so any magical items that are attuned specifically to you. This character has a Cloak of Displacement that is specifically attuned to them. Features and Traits is going to tell you all of the different features and traits of your class, as well as your species. Whenever you click on one of these, it will pull them up over here. And it'll pull up the ruling from the player's handbook that refers to this trait. You also have your background. So your background is something that you're going to choose as well. And it will change your some of your stats, as well as probably give you some proficiencies as well. In here you can have your background, the characteristics of your character, as well as your appearance. I am not that worried about these two. You can put whatever, you can document as much as you want into here, but we'll be documenting these in different ways. The most important thing is to understand how to read these, and how to read these, and then be able to go through and see your spells, understand your spells, your inventory, and the actions that you can take. Alrighty, well, if you have any questions, let me know. Alright, so now that we know how to navigate the character sheet, let's figure out how to make a character. So you should have a link from your DM that will be a link to the campaign. And when you click on that link to that campaign while you are logged in, you'll get something like this. Dadbot Dorian has invited you to join the Five of Hearts. Please select the character that you would like to join with below. in here, I can see all of my characters that I've created for other campaigns, or I can create a new character. For this, we're going to create a new character. Up here is your portrait. You can upload your own, or they have a ton of them in here. These are all from the various Wizards of the Coast official art. Give your character a name. I'm just going to call this guy Steve. Yep. That's a real Gith name. Cool. So we're going to make him a Gith. Let's find one. Let's find a Gith Yankee. There's got to be one. Oh. There we go. There's Steve. Alrighty. We're going to leave all of these the same for my campaigns. Ask your DM. For example, I ignore coin weight, but I do use encumbrance. Personally, I'm a fan of that. We're doing milestone, advancement type, and fixed hit points, but ask your DM about these. So next up, we choose our class. I'll probably make another video going over an overview of each of the different classes available in Dungeons & Dragons, but there are quite a few different ones. Primarily, I use the 2014 core rules, but I'm perfectly okay with using the 2024 new rules as well. Let's go ahead and pick our class. We're going to make this character a bard. We're going to add that class. And when you do that, I should have remove him. This is going to give me a link to the details page, and it's also going to tell me the primary ability of this class is charisma. The saves for this class are dexterity and charisma, so I want to focus on these traits when I'm building my character. So I'll also tell you your hit point die. Oops. So how you gain hit points. If I were to choose, say, let's go with a fighter instead. My hit point die is a d10, and primarily I'm strength and dexterity. And my saves are strength and constitution. What we're doing here is we're adding one level of one of these classes. You can have as many levels in as many classes as you want. It just takes time to get there. Especially with milestone achievement, you kind of want to talk to your DM about, like, what's the maximum level that I'm probably going to hit. In this campaign, Wild Beyond the Witchlight, we're going to take our characters from level 1 to roughly level 12 or 13. We'll choose Bard. I get these level 1 traits. Primary abilities. Here's my saving throws. I get these weapons proficiencies, these tool proficiencies, armor training, and I get bardic inspiration at my first level. But this will go over all of the different things that you're going to get from your level in this class, and what you might get at later levels as well. See, at second level, if I were to take another level in Bard, I can add half of my proficiency bonus to any ability check that I make that uses a skill that I don't have proficiency in. So once I do that, it's going to tell me I have some choices to make, and you'll see some little exclamation points over here. So I have 6 choices to make at first level for my core bard traits. 3 musical instruments, and 3 skills. So he's good at the drums, he's good at the pan flute, and he's good at the clarinet. And then I get 3 skills that I get to be proficient with as well. We're going to take performance, sleight of hand, and Insight. He's really good at reading a crowd. Okay, so that is our first level that we've taken into Bard. We also choose our spells here. So we're going to add spells. I get 2 cantrips and 4 prepared spells at the first level. So first I just want to look at the cantrips. I can filter these now, so I'm going to filter this by level. Level 0 is going to give me my cantrip spells, and I get 2 of those. So let's look at our cantrips that we have. I want Vicious Mockery, and if I wanted to learn more about this cantrip, I can click on it, and it'll tell me that it costs an action, its range is 60 feet, it has a verbal component, it is instantaneous, it has a saving throw. They have to beat a wisdom saving throw of 10. You unleash a string of insults laced with subtle enchantments at one creature you can see or hear within range. The target must succeed on a wisdom saving throw or take 1d6 psychic damage and have disadvantage on the next attack roll it makes before the end of its next turn. So you can debuff and hurt an enemy without using a spell slot, but they have to lose this roll. And then let's grab Minor Illusion. I love Minor Illusion. Now we get 4 more spells. So those are going to be our leveled spells that we have. And we can prepare these spells. Let's prepare just a few. But you can see you have a lot of different spells that you could do. Take your time with this. Click through. Check them out. I'm just, grabbing a couple of things here. These aren't even necessarily spells that I would always use. Okay, so once we've chosen our spells and our class features, we can hit this next button. And that's going to bring us to our background. Again, there are tons of backgrounds. Just like there's tons of classes and tons of species and lots of choices that you can make. So take your time with your character creation. Background is going to not only change your stats a little bit, but for example, I'm going to go ahead and click Haunted One. You are haunted by something so terrible that you dare not speak of it. This is going to add roleplay elements to your character that you can use. When you choose a background, I personally, as a DM, I know not every DM is like this, but I do expect you to use that background in your character, in your roleplay. It's part of the fun. You're creating this character, and you're getting these skills from it. So, why do you have this skill proficiency in Arcana? Maybe it's because of the thing that you are haunted, that you dare not speak of, that you've tried to bury it away with no avail. This gives you a lot of opportunities to, if you're not used to roleplay, you can pull on this to add a lot of depth to your character. So we're going to say that they're good at investigation and Arcana. They're like Harry Dresden. This also is going to give me a language and a rare language. And, with having this rare primordial language that they know, me as a DM, I'm going to put that in there somewhere. I'm going to add your background into the story one way or another. So they know Elvish and Primordial. Next, we're going to get into the species of our characters. There's going to be a ton of them, so I'm fine with the 2024 rulings. I'm also fine with the legacy rulings. And we are going to make him we said he's a Gith, so we're going to use the legacy rulings on Gith. Gith Yankee. And again, there's tons of different species that you can do. Check the details pages for these characters. There's a lot of really cool stuff in here. There's a lot of lore in here. I will absolutely be using your species in as part of your how other NPCs interact with you and as part of your story that we touch on within the campaign. The campaign itself is a storyline that's already written, but we're layering your story, your character's story on top of that. But we'll go ahead and pick our languages that we get from our species. Now, we had already gotten some languages from our background. We're getting more languages here from our species. Let's say we could also speak Undercommon. And it is assumed that your character can speak and read and write Common and one other language. There are some species, namely the Grung, that don't speak, read, and write Common. So keep an eye on that and make sure that you can everybody speaks a language that together can talk to each other in the party. Otherwise, you need translators. It gets really tricky. So then I get astral knowledge from my Githyanki species as well. I can mystically access a reservoir of experiences of entities connected to the astral plane, which is where the Githyanki are from. Whenever I finish a long rest, I can gain proficiency in a skill of my choice, or with one weapon of my choice, and with one weapon of my choice. So every time I go to sleep for the night, I wake up and maybe I'm really good at persuasion, and I'm also really good with dice. You also learn the Mage Hand cantrip, and starting at 3rd level, you can cast the jump spell, and your intelligence, wisdom, or charisma is your spellcasting ability for these spells. So I'm going to choose charisma, and the reason I'm going to choose charisma is because from my class that I chose, my primary skills for my class are going to be charisma and dexterity. Next up, we're going to choose our abilities. There's a few different generation methods that you can do. I'm fine with point buy. I'm also fine with standard array. So for standard array, this is going to be the easiest. You have 15, 14, 13, 12, 10, and 8. And you'll just choose strength, dexterity, constitution, intelligence, wisdom, or charisma for each of those. And with point buy, a little bit more detailed, you have 27 points, and you can place them into any of these skills to give you a total. We're going to go ahead and do a standard array. Our bard is going to be primarily charismatic, and then also dexterous. Next, we're going to go with constitution. Next, we're going to go with wisdom. And I will say that my intelligence is a flat 0, but my strength is a -1. Keep in mind, these affect those modifiers that we looked at in the previous little section of this video. We also get an ability score increase from my origin, from my species. So I can increase 2 scores or increase 3 scores. Let's look at what my totals are here and what we know about how these modifiers work. So we can see here, -1 to strength, +2 to dex, +1 to con, etc., etc. And these increase on even numbers. So our charisma and our constitution are both 1 number away from something. And this one is 2 numbers away from something. I think what I want to do is increase both my charisma and my dexterity. So I'm going to increase 2 scores, 1 by 2 and 1 by +1. The one that I'm going to increase by 2 is going to be my dexterity, because it'll bump me up to the next number, which will make this modifier +3. See? The next one I want to bump up is my charisma, because if I add 1 to this, it'll also bring it to 16 and give me a +3 modifier there as well. Take your time when you're playing with this. Feel free to use the point by as well. And be careful about negative modifiers. Now, this negative modifier affects anything that I'm using with strength. Anything that I have to use strength for with this character, he's going to be naturally not as good at. Last thing I want to touch on here is your dexterity modifier is going to increase your initiative, which is something that I should have pointed out on the character sheet, but I didn't. Your initiative is how the order at which you go in combat. So each round of combat is roughly 6 seconds. And so who goes first in that 6 seconds? Everything's kind of happening at one time. Initiative is what decides that. Next, we are going to get to our starting equipment. You can either check the A and B here, or what I would rather do is, for our campaign, we'll do starting equipment together at session 0. Once you get to this point here, you could just hit next if you're in one of my campaigns, and you can go to view character sheet. Now you have a character that is inside of your DM's campaign. And you are done.